Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here. A couple weeks ago I did a truck gun video. How to upgrade a Marlin 336 in 30-30 for very practical use out to 150 to maybe 200 yards. And how it would serve as something to carry in your vehicle with you in case you needed more defensive firepower than a handgun would offer. The video was pretty popular. A lot of views, a lot of comments. I called it a 50-state truck gun. Some of the viewers liked the idea, but they told me it was not a 50-state truck gun because, well, they all had a reason why you couldn't carry a long gun in your vehicle in their state. And interpreted literally, I'm sure they're true. And there are certainly some very, very stupid state transportation laws out there. We'll talk about that as we go along. So I want to address some of those naysayers. I want to bring you up to date on the project's wrap-up. Now, all of my life I've had things not always go my way, and we kind of call that the Fairburn effect. Anything that can go wrong just might go wrong. I guess I'm related to Murphy. And the Fairburn effect reared its head in this project like it does in so many. Mostly when I came time to sight the rifle in. I needed to do some adjustments there. And I was still in need of a carry load for it that I was going to work up and produce a supply of reloaded ammunition to carry for the rifle. Now, I had excess ghost ring sights on there and had to do a redo, and I'll tell you the details of that as we go along. I worked up several loads, checked accuracy and velocity, and I got my load standardized. So the project is finished. It's ready to go under the rear seat of my truck. Stick around. I'll show you how it turned out. And it turned out every bit as good as I'd hoped it would. Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here. Finishing up load development for my 30-30 truck gun. If you're interested in that, find my video. I want to announce to you that after long last and some computer tribulations, both versions of my book, Building a Better Gunfighter, are available now on Amazon.com. I'll give you a little bit of a close-up here. You can see that banner across there. It says not for resale. I waited until they could actually print the paperback copy and send me an author's proof. So it's here, it's well done. There's a Kindle book version of this for $9.95. There's the paperback copy for $19.95. Of course, sales tax is going to be added to both of those. And you can find them on Amazon.com. Just search for Building a Better Gunfighter and you'll find either the paperback version or the Kindle version there. What's this book about? In 1999, I got a rare opportunity for a firearms instructor. A large state police organization here in the Midwest needed to test for new sidearms. I got put in charge of that program. Long story. Ultimately, we ended up with Glock 22s. As a part of that process, I was able to get into their records and I analyzed their officer-involved shootings for the previous 10 years. And what I found was their hit rate was 11% when they shot at bad guys. That's the lowest I've ever seen documented. There were only 2 cases where the bad guys shot at the troopers, but their hit rate was also 11%. Statistically, the sample's too small. But the academy commander asked me, he said, we train these guys quite a bit. We assume the bad guys have little to no training. We're hitting at the same rate. What are we doing wrong? And I said, sir, with all due respect, you are training your troopers to go to the next quarterly pistol match. They were still doing a lot of 25-yard, one-hand bullseye shooting in their program. This is in 1999. I said, we need to quit training them to go to a pistol match. I mean, your program works. They win those pistol matches. They got lots of plaques and trophies. But I don't care about that. I want them to win the next gunfight. And he said, put together the best gunfighter training program you possibly can. And at that point, about 25 years of experience on my end and probably 150 years of experience with the team I put together, this is the program we put together. Differences: instead of linear training from A to Z, we put together a circular training program. We focused on 3 core essentials: marksmanship, which is what everyone trains; mechanics, which is loading, unloading, clearing malfunctions, keeping the gun running. At that time, if their troopers had a malfunction during a pistol shoot on the range, they would put their hand up and wait for a range officer to clear it. They did not know how to clear a malfunction. So the mechanics was going to be very important to that agency. And then the third M, marksmanship, mechanics, mindset. We wanted to train these people how to be prepared for a gunfight, not a pistol match. And that includes a lot of force-on-force training with simunition weapons. We broke that down into circular programs, kind of a basic, intermediate, and advanced circular training program. So instead of doing a skill once, we did the core skills in each of those levels many, many times. And that's how the human brain is programmed. Repetitive, proper conditioning. I said they hit 11% the 10 years before we changed the program. About 8 years after the change, we looked at their officer-involved shootings again. The hit rate had gone to 62% on the street. That's the highest I've ever seen documented. So I think the program works. I think we figured out how to build a better gunfighter. If you're interested, look on Amazon.com. Give one of these books a try. Thank you. All right, first problem was the sights. When I started working up my loads with 170 grain soft point bullets, I used those test loads, climbing up half grain of powder at a time. I used those to establish the zero on the rifle. Well, what I found was I had to move the rear aperture all the way to the left to get the windage set. And that's not acceptable. So something was clearly wrong. Perhaps even worse, because I did get it set for windage, with the sight bottomed out, and those excess sights just screw up or down with some opposing lock screws. And I'll show you this in a video as we go along. With it bottomed out, I was still shooting about 8 inches high at 50 yards. That's way, way too high. So I could not get it sighted in with the excess sights that I ordered for it. So, put in a call to the tech folks at SX Sights, and we very quickly got things figured out. He told me that the left and right problem was probably what they called clocking, which means the front sight was not sitting exactly up and down straight at the 12 o'clock position. And while I was on the phone, I'm kind of looking down the barrel of this rifle, and I can see, well, shucks, this thing is cocked off to the left. I mean, it's visibly off to the left. Now, when you're adjusting rear sights on a rifle, if the rifle's shooting to the right, then you move your sights to the left, and that's what I'd had to do to get it zeroed. But it's the opposite with the front sight. So if the front sight is off to the left, that's going to make it shoot right. He said that's not unusual in older Marlins. He said as they threaded that barrel in, the holes for the front sight and the dovetail for the rear had already been cut into the barrel. And if they cranked it in just a little bit too hard, a little bit too much torque, that would rotate that front sight off to the left. They had a fix for that. They have a front sight base that has kind of long oval screw slots in it. So I can start it on there, screw it down part way, and then I can roll that front sight left or right to correct that clocking error. And he said, which I knew, that I would have to move that front sight as far over to the right as I could in that base, and then a dovetail sight would go in that. The white line sight would dovetail into that base once it was locked down. He said the up and down problem was also probably linked to the fact that this was an older Marlin. He said as These rifles are made over a series of decades. They may have slightly different barrel diameters, sight locations. He said, you just need a taller front sight. So a couple days later, a package came in the mail from XS, no charge. It had this adjustable front sight base and a taller white line front sight. So I pulled off the old sight, put the new one on, drifted it as far right as I could, and locked it down with red Loctite. Once that had set up, I put the new dovetailed white line front sight in, and I drove it in from left to right so that if anything's going to move, it's going to keep that base as far right as it possibly could. When I get out there, I was within an inch or so of windage left and right, and of course the rear sight was just sort of estimated in place. So a very quick adjustment for windage put me dead on where I needed to be, and the rear sight is essentially centered. Looks good, works good, just the way it should be. The taller front sight allowed me to bring that rear sight up just a little bit and get it where I needed it for elevation. Okay, sight problem fixed. I mentioned in the first video that the loading gate on the Marlin was extremely stiff, difficult to load, and that the inside edges of that loading gate area were pretty sharp. I mentioned in the other video that I had ordered a part from Ranger Point Precision that they call their lightweight loading gate. It's made of aluminum instead of steel. It's pretty easy to install. I'll show you how bad it is if you can see that close up there. I got a couple blood blisters on that thumb from feeding rounds into that Marlin when it was in its original condition. When I had it apart before I installed that new loading gate, I took a small stone, a gunsmithing stone, and I eased off the inside edges of that loading gate area so they didn't have that kind of almost razor sharp edge to them. Problem's fixed. Loads like a dream now. So I started working up loads. I had some Hornady 170 grain soft point bullets to start with. I just happened to have them on hand. But, and this is no beating up on Hornady. I have worked with Hornady. I did some consulting for them at one time. I've used a lot of their bullets over the years. But their traditional cup and core designs, like, you know, their standard 30-30 soft point bullets, I think leave a little bit to desired. They do not hold together as well as some other cup and cores that I had used over the years before we went to premium grade bullets that came on the market. So I intended to use Spear cup and core soft point, 170 grain soft point bullets. They've just done a much better job for me and for some of my friends that hunt big game. 170 grain factory loads a lot of times hover around the 2,050 feet per second range. They will quote them faster, but I'm sure they're testing out of 24-inch barrels, and out of a 20-inch carbine, you're probably not going to get that. But the load data told me that if I used the Lever Evolution powder from Hodgdon, it gave significantly more velocity than any other powder they showed. So my goal was to try to get to 2,200 feet per second. I might as well jazz this up a little bit over factory ammo if I can. And with those 170 grain Hornadys, I got to 2,200 feet per second, no problem, and not showing any kind of pressure signs at all on the primers. In fact, according to the load data in the Hodgdon website, you can't really get in trouble with that Lever Evolution powder. The top loads they list for all the 30-30 bullets are compressed charges of powder. So apparently all you can fit in there is still going to be safe to use. Now the accuracy wasn't tremendous working up these loads. I mean, it was running 1.25 to, a couple of them were almost 2.5 inches at 50 yards, which that's not great. But I got my velocity. And one load in particular did a lot better. So the Spear bullets showed up. I started loading some of them with the same powder charges to see how they were going to do. Now one load in particular put 3 rounds into about 3/8 of an inch at 50 yards, which was so unusual compared to the others that I thought it was probably a fluke. Things probably just sort of went the right direction for that one time. So I loaded up 9 more rounds. I wanted to fire 3 3-round groups to get a good measure of the accuracy. And then I also went up or down about a half grain of powder from that load to see which one was going to give me the best accuracy. As it ended up, my top load was about a half grain higher than that magic 3/8 of an inch group, which turned out to have been a fluke. And the velocity ended up at about 2175. That's really close to the 2200 feet per second goal I had in mind. And the accuracy's okay. I think the rifle needs a little tweaking. First thing I've always done, if I got a rifle that it's not terrible, but it's just not quite shooting like it should. First thing I do is just clean the living snot out of it. I have no idea how much this rifle's been fired or what kind of stuff was fired in it before I got it. So that means copper fouling solvent cleaner, 2 or 3 passes of that, clean patches coming out. Then I will get a good tight fitting patch on a rifle jag and I coat it with a material called JB Bore Paste that you can get at Brownells or other places. JB Bore Paste is a mild abrasive. The abrasive is harder than copper, softer than even mild steel. So what it will do is scrub out fouling, hard carbon fouling, copper fouling, lead fouling, and things like that. And a lot of times, you can clean a barrel with solvents and patches. You look down that barrel at a light and it's just bright as a mirror. And then you load up our tight fitting patch with that JB Bore Paste and you give it like 10 good back and forths, scrubbing through that barrel, push it out the other end and it will come out black. What you thought was a beautiful clean barrel has just got crud in it like you can't believe. So I'll do 2 or 3 of those 10 round or 10 stroke clean outs with JB Bore Paste, flush it back out with solvent. I had a buddy one time had a nice Winchester Model 70 243. He just said he shot a lot of rounds through it. He just couldn't get it to shoot for crap anymore. We did that intense cleaning operation and it went from 2.5 inch groups at 100 yards down to about 1.25 inches. I mean, it literally cut the group size in half. So that's the first thing I will do. The second thing, people have said, well, gee, maybe your crown is nicked up. Well, it appears to be fine, but it's kind of hard to tell. And one thing you can do is with a round head brass screw, or you can get tapered jigs various places made out of brass. Coat them with some lapping compound and just kind of move them in a slow drill and figure eight it as you're doing and just kind of polish up the edge of that crown. A lot of times that will just bring groups in. So I will probably play with this little 30-30 and see if I can get the groups in a little bit better. It's okay the way it is. More accuracy is always better. But the velocity told me what I needed for a drop table. And I'll show you a photograph of this. The ammo carrier I got from Hill People Gear has a window on the side of it, and so I printed up a drop table with that Spear 170 grain bullet at a velocity of 2175. I'm sighting at the trajectory curve I'm going for is to be 1 inch high at 100 yards, or approximately, again, 1 inch high, 1.1 actually, 1 inch high at 50 yards. And if I'm on that curve, that means my bullet will rise no more than 1.5 inches and drop no more than 1.5 inches from the muzzle to 150 yards. So that's a point blank range of 150 yards with a very tight 3 inch, no more than 1.5 inches high, 1.5 inches low. And the accuracy of that rifle, I think, is going to stay comfortably inside that 3 inch circle as well to 150 yards. So 0 to 150, put the sights where I want them, it's going to fall in that 3 inch circle somewhere. I can live with that. That's good enough for hunting. It's certainly good enough for self-defense. At 200 yards, my load would drop about 6.6 inches. Now, I ran the chart out to 250, but you see past 200, the 30-30 starts to drop pretty fast. It's 10 inches low at 225, and it's almost 15 inches low at 250. Plus, you're just running out of steam. Your velocity's dropping off significantly. The expansion's going to fall off significantly. But with this simple sighting setup, I'm good to 150 yards with no holdover and only about 6 inches if I think I'm stretching things out to 200 yards. That's a truck gun. Now, several commentators said, well, gee, why don't you go with the Hornady FTX or their newer Monoflex? That's the sharper pointed projectiles with that red, soft, squishy tip on there that prevents chain firing in the tubular magazine. Oh, they give you so much better downrange ballistics. Well, do they? It's a good idea, and I'm not putting it down. The original 160 FTX, which was essentially a cup and core bullet with that red plastic tip, the difference in drop, if I ran that 160 up to pretty much a full load, a comparable load to my 170 Spear, and the Spear soft points have a considerably better ballistic coefficient than Hornady 170 flat points. They're pointier. The difference in drop between my Spears and the 160 FTS, at 200 yards, it makes less than an inch of difference in drop. Now, you would think those pointed bullets would make a lot more difference, but at 30-30 velocities and distances out to a couple hundred yards, it's really not that big a deal. I quit using Hornady cup and core bullets when that's what I used when I moved to Wyoming. Shooting deer, shooting antelope with them. I had some jacket separations. And I just thought the Hornadys were a little lightly built for what I was doing. I was shooting a 270 at the time. And I went to those Spear hot core soft points, which they just held together, they penetrated better. As more technologically advanced bullets came online, I left those Spears behind as well. But for the 30-30, I think they're just fine. Now the Monoflex, the 140 grain tipped bullet that Hornady brought out second for the 30-30, because it's lighter, because you can get more velocity, it will give about an inch and a half less drop at 200 yards than my Spear load. It's going to carry a little bit more energy out there, and I trust that Monoflex, I trust that solid copper bullet to expand well and perform beautifully. I'm just not sure, 1.7 inches difference at 200 yards is that big a deal, because I don't plan to shoot that far. And at closer distances, it's even less difference. If you want to go with one of those sharper pointed red tipped Hornady bullets in your 30-30 or your 45-70 other lever guns, go for it. There's nothing wrong with them. Now I'm going to give you a little video clip and show you how I zeroed in this XS rear sight. And the Skinner sight works the same way. Some of the others actually have kind of micrometer clicks. But the Skinner and the XS are just dual opposed locking screws. You raise the ghost ring sight up and down by threading it up and down. And it has flats on the side to lock it in position. And at 50 yards, 1/2 turn, moving rotating 180 degrees on that sight, seem to move it up and down about a 1/2 inch on this rifle. And that will vary by caliber, and it will vary by your sight radius, how long your barrel is and things like that. Okay, when you're adjusting these opposing screw sights, so these would be like the XS or the Skinner, something that does not have micrometer clicks on it. It's a little bit of by guess and by golly. All right, this thing is hitting 2 1/4 inches high. At 50 yards, I want it to be about an inch high. So I need to come down about an inch. Now the way you set these is to loosen up these opposing set screws. You need to loosen them on both sides. I'm shooting to the right. That means I need to move the rear to the left. But you basically have to loosen up both screws because the rear sight is threaded with flats. So you need to give it enough room to move up. I'm shooting 2 inches high. I want to be I'm shooting 2 1/4 inches high. So I'm going to come down 2 1/2 turns and see what that does to me. So thread it in. 1, 2. It's shooting 2 inches right, so I need to drift this thing a little bit to the left. So I'm going to leave this left screw where it is. Tighten up the right screw, and that will push this to the left a little bit. So tighten down the right screw. That's going to lock both the height and windage adjustments. So I've got this pretty well locked down now. So I should be bringing that group down and to the left. And we'll snug these down pretty good. So once I have this exactly where I want it, inch high at 100 yards, then I will loosen up one of those windage screws, degrease everything, and run it back in tight with blue Loctite when that has set up. Then I'll run the other side out, degrease it, Loctite it, put it back in, and that rifle should stay zeroed in for ever, we hope. Now, when I call this a 50-state truck gun, what I meant was the lever action rifle design is not going to run afoul of semi-automatic rifle bans in any of the states that have them. Nobody bans a lever action rifle. Some states, mostly east of Illinois, east of the Mississippi, but Colorado, I'm told, now has some carrying in the vehicle restrictions. And some of them are pretty severe, some of them are pretty stupid. One guy told me in Rhode Island that you can only have, that other than a concealed carry weapon that's on your person, you can only have a gun in your car from your home to the shooting range or hunting site and back. And he said if you go to a shooting range in Rhode Island, that they will actually give you a receipt to prove you were there in case you get caught going home and have a rifle in your vehicle. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I'm not sure how ridiculous the police officers would be, but there are some stupid states out there and they have some stupid rules. Now, we've seen in the last several years how our Second Amendment rights have been being freed up substantially by the U.S. Supreme Court. I think we're headed further down that. I think those semi-auto rifle bans will go away, and probably within a year or so they will go away. And it is Illinois' case that might be the one that causes that to happen. So those silly transportation laws are just going to be another impediment to our Second Amendment rights. And we should eventually get those changed as well. But some people told me you couldn't even travel in their state with an unloaded cased rifle in the vehicle, basically. That's ridiculous. Now, I'm not suggesting that anyone go out there and commit illegal activity, but it's up to you to determine your own personal comfort level with what you're going to do for self-protection. You make your choice, and you be prepared for whatever the results are. If what you're doing is technically illegal, that's a decision you have to make. Now, a lot of these long gun carry restrictions are not really crime related. They kind of come from hunting. And so a lot of the game and fish departments have gotten these laws passed to try to cut down on poaching, so that you can't just drive around with a rifle in your car and be able to take advantage if you see a deer along the highway. That's where a lot of this comes from, I think. But if you are traveling cross-country and you are going through some of these restrictive states, there is a federal law that gives you protection. And it's called the Firearms Owners Protection Act of 1986. Under that FOPA, Safe Passage provision, it says you can transport firearms through restrictive states where they may not be legal to possess, provided that you are legally allowed to possess that firearm in your state of origin and the state that is your destination. So if I'm going to go hunt in New Hampshire and I'm going to drive through New York or Massachusetts to get there, I can do that legally. The weapon must be unloaded. The ammunition must be in a separate container. And generally, the weapon must be enclosed in a locked case. Now, that does not necessarily mean a locked hard case. Some states say it can't be in the same compartment as the driver. Well, that's a little tough if you're driving a pickup truck that doesn't have a cap on it. And those kind of laws have been struck down in other states for that stupidity rule. If the firearm is unloaded and stored according to the FOPA law, if it is unloaded and stored in a locked container or in a compartment separate from the driver, like the trunk, and is separate from the ammunition, then you can legally pass through any state so long as you don't stop for an extended period. Stop for gas, stop for a meal, yeah. Stop overnight, you may be in trouble. But the federal law gives you protection when you are traveling through one of those restrictive states, as I said, so long as you can legally possess where you started and legally possess at your state of destination. Now, there are stupid liberal states with stupid liberal prosecutors. And if you get afoul of these people, they may ignore that Federal Firearm Owners Protection Act. But if they do, they will be wrong. Now, I understand before the naysayers get busy on the comments again, if you get arrested wrongly and you get charged wrongly, it's still going to cost you time and money to use that federal statute to your own benefit. So if you know you're going through a state like that, avoid it if you can. That's why I very rarely go to the East Coast. Unfortunately, I'm headed there in a couple of days for an NRA Board of Directors meeting to Virginia. So if you're going to carry a truck gun, my advice is keep it out of sight. Keep it in the trunk if you're in a car. If you have a closed up truck bed with a cap or a tonneau cover, maybe that's the place to have it. My 30-30 in a soft case will fit under the rear seat of my 4-door pickup, fold the seat down, completely out of sight. When you're traveling with a truck, gun, or other thing like that, avoid things that would get you stopped by the police. And of course, the number one thing that people do that tends to get them pulled over on the interstate is speeding. Here's a little free tip. There are hardly any cops out there who will stop you for speeding until you are 10 miles per hour over the limit or more. I have put thousands upon thousands of miles on interstate trips with my cruise control set no more than 9 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. I've never been stopped. If you do get stopped, we all believe in our Second Amendment rights. Some of us communicate how we feel in different ways. And so getting in some cop's face on a traffic stop and telling him that you have, by God, Second Amendment rights and you'll do and carry what you want, well, that's a good way to get your vehicle looked at a little bit more intensely. And if you have pissed them off and you are afoul of their state laws, that's not going to help. One thing I don't do is I don't have NRA stickers in the back window of my truck. I don't have, take my gun from my cold dead hands bumper stickers on the rear bumper. I don't give them any reason to think that I'm transporting an arsenal. So if I do get stopped, they're probably going to have no reason to look any further. But if something bad happens and I need that truck gun, I need to pull it out to save myself or someone with me, or as I mentioned in the last video, if I see a cop in trouble out on a traffic stop, if I see someone running across the parking lot of the Walmart from an active shooter event, and these things happen out there all the time. Not dozens of incidents per year, but several incidents per year. Cops are assisted by citizens when they're getting shot at or beat up badly on a highway. Active shooter events happen all the time. We had an active shooter event at a Catholic church school combination just this week. That's a whole nother topic, a whole nother ball of worms from what we know about that young man. I'm not going to call him a woman, even though he changed his name. These things happen, folks. So you got to make the choice. Are you going to carry a weapon for those kind of rare incidences? If you do, could you end up in a jam? Yeah. Like Booker T. Washington said, it is better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. And statistically, those crazy liberal prosecutors don't have a very good track record when it comes to prosecuting a hero. If you stop the killing of innocent people, even if you might step just a little bit out of the narrow lanes of legality in their state, I think public opinion is going to be on your side. And I think both the National Rifle Association and I think every insurance group for concealed carriers should have a policy of defending us when we get in a jam for having a gun in one of those restrictive states. Let's say I'm driving through New Jersey someday, which is a very unlikely occurrence. I have my truck gun with me. I'm not staying overnight. I'm just passing through the state. So I am protected by that federal law. But for some reason, something happens, I bump into a car, I get in an accident, they find the rifle, and they decide to charge me with their state firearm transportation laws. But I was otherwise legal and would be protected by that federal law. Then the NRA, Gun Owners of America, whatever groups you want to come up with, and definitely your concealed carry provider, should be ready to jump in and help you financially to fight that wrongful prosecution. I'm not sure those organizations do that now, but they should do that. And I might just mention that at an NRA meeting. So my truck gun package is complete for what I want. It is legal for those regions of the country where I travel, where I camp. The 30-30 is a great anti-personnel round. With those 170 grain soft points, I think I can kill any creature I need to kill, or at least deter, even up to the size of a grizzly bear. If I go to other states, when I have to go east or something like that, then I'd have to make do with a concealed handgun. And I think concealed carry, reciprocity, should be nationwide. I think all citizens should be able to carry concealed weapons everywhere. And I think they should be able to have a truck gun everywhere. Hopefully, that will come to pass. Until then, you have to decide what you want if you want a truck gun, and you have to decide where and when you're going to have it in your vehicle. Folks, if these videos are useful to you, then I hope you'll subscribe. Resubscribe if you need to, because YouTube sometimes will kick people off. Give me a thumbs up, give me a like, share it with your friends. Whatever you do, be armed when you need to be, and you all be safe out there. Okay, we got them both here now. You ready? Bud got one. Ginger got one. Oh, she missed it. She usually gets them, doesn't she, bud? Okay, girl, last one. You ready? You ready? Yeah! That's all there is till next time.